Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.
Tall and thin and young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, each one she passes goes,
Antonio Carlos Jobim, how I remember that song well. Hello, everybody. Last week, we were coming to you for the global travel update from Cairo. I promised you an unusual destination in just a few days, and we did. We flew from Cairo to Rio de Janeiro here in Brazil. So welcome for this Tuesday, the last Tuesday of March 2025. Lots of stuff to talk about, so let's get right into it before we get to your questions. The fallout from the Trump immigration and among other things, in terms of travel to and from the United States, is now palpable. We're now seeing about a 22% drop in foreign travelers to the U.S. in the last 6 weeks. That's an average. Travel from Canadians to the U.S. down 40%. So hold on to that thought. Even the U.S. government is spending less on travel because of all the shakeups in the reorganization under DOGE. And now we have something else to deal with, which is the proposed ban from the Trump administration of travel to the U.S. for citizens of 43 separate countries. Now, it hasn't gone into effect yet. I have no idea whether it will, but just the perception of what this is saying as the United States being unwelcoming has prompted even a bigger drop in travel. What's crazy about that 43 country list is what's on the list. Okay, you expect Iraq to be on the list, or Yemen, or Iran. What is St. Lucia doing on the list? Antigua and Barbuda, other islands in the Caribbean. I do not get it. But they don't get it either, but they got the message. And the message is, we don't want you. The United States being perceived right now as being unwelcoming. Now, I'm not making a political statement here. I'm not talking about a red issue or a blue issue. When you tell people they can't come, it becomes a real travel issue, not to mention a real economic issue. Already, Southwest Airlines and Delta have slashed their quarterly earnings projections by a half. How significant is that? Now, let's take a look at a little bit of a silver lining, at least in the short term. It's creating a buyer's market. If nobody's flying to the U.S. or 22% is less, that means all those seats are empty going back, which is where we come in, a buyer's market. We're seeing huge drops in airfares to Europe and to other parts of the world, like the Middle East, even to Asia. So that's not going to be forever. In the next 2 weeks, it'll probably go back. But for the next 2 weeks, if you operate quickly, you're probably going to get some great bargains. We've identified about 30 different airfares just from the U.S. to Europe of under $600 round trip. Last week was under $500 round trip. It's still a bargain, right? I mentioned last week the airfare from San Francisco to Cairo was $437. You can't get from San Francisco to San Diego for $437. So very interesting there. But the problem is going to get compounded by something else. It's the law of reciprocity. We all know about U.S. State Department advisories. And under the Trump administration, there are advisories now for all 196 countries. We've talked about it on the show before. There are 4 different levels of severity. Level 1 is travel with normal caution. I still have no idea what that means. To me, it means don't trip and fall. Level 2 is travel with increased caution. For most Americans, that means you're putting plywood on your windows. Level 3 is reconsider travel. That means you're in the basement in the safe room. And level 4 are 3 words: do not travel. And now you're a barricaded suspect. But remember, these are advisories. They're not laws, rules, or regulations. But what are they triggered now? Reciprocity from other countries. The United Kingdom, Finland, Denmark, and Germany have now issued travel advisories to their citizens, warning them about coming to the United States. And what are they pinpointing? Everything from gun violence to LGBTQ issues to, basically, I'll say what they said. You may be carrying a valid passport from that country and other essential travel documents, but there's no guarantee, according to these warnings, that the United States will let you in. So given those warnings, another reason why people are not coming. Obviously, we're going to be following this. It's crazy, right? And things you need to know. Now, moving along, speaking of international travel, I want to share with you a little story about passports. Everybody knows a U.S. passport is valid for 10 years, right? Wrong. It's valid for 10 years as far as the U.S. State Department is concerned, but as far as other foreign countries are concerned, not necessarily so. A lot of countries are worried that if you have less than 6 months of validity on your passport, you may go there and stay there and have no way to get home and may not want to go home, and now you become a ward of that country. So there are about 13 countries, and I'll give you some of those countries. It's Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, Belgium, that basically say you have less than 6 months of validity, you can't come. There are 13 more countries that will not let you in if you have 3 months or less. So if you're holding a passport now that's going to be expiring in the next year, don't wait. Get it renewed now. By the way, the State Department has a system that's actually working now. You can actually renew it online. And I have reports from our friends saying that they're getting their passports back within 3 weeks, which is great news. Get it done now before the summer rush, and you're good for another 9 years, even though it says 10 on the passport. At least now you know the rules. There's one other bizarre rule that only applies to South Africa, but I'll give it to you anyway. If you don't have at least 2 free pages on your passport with no stamps on them, and they have to be consecutive pages, South Africa won't let you in. And I've tried for 10 years to get South Africa to explain that rule. They won't do it. Either way, though, it is a rule, so be aware of it. All right, so that's what we want to talk about that. Now, I want to share with you a funny story. Talk about a tourism campaign that backfired. New Zealand is one of my favorite countries in the world. Those of you know, we did one of our royal tours there with the Prime Minister. If I could figure out a way to move there, I would. But they came up with a tourism campaign, a tourism slogan, which didn't really take hold the way they wanted it to. You ready for the 3 words of their tourism campaign? Everybody must go. Well, actually, in New Zealand, everybody did. 130,000 New Zealanders left the country and moved to Australia, citing housing shortages and everything else. Not exactly what they were hoping for. But anyway, one of these days, I'm going to come back on the show and give you the stupidest tourism campaigns ever run, all right, which mean nothing or are misleading. I remember a tourism campaign for Bermuda that showed beautiful beaches and lovely couples and unbelievable vegetation. We had to bust them. The entire campaign was shot in Australia. I have more to do with that. We'll do that in another week. I just really want to say funny thing about New Zealand there. Okay, one more thing I want to share with you, which is kind of fun. This goes back to a show that we did years ago, both for magazines and for television. There was, in those days, an airline schedule on the island of St. Martin that twice a week, either a KLM flight or, this is really dating it back, a Pan Am flight would come in from either New York or from Amsterdam. They were flying a 747 into that airport. It is a small airport with a very tiny runway. And I discovered it one day when I was going back by the airport. I wasn't leaving, but I saw all these chefs standing at the edge of the runway on a little ledge by the sand of the beach, because the plane comes in over the beach. And I went, what are they doing there? They were waiting for the Air France 747, because when that plane came in once or twice a week, it brought in all the caviar, the legume, the champagne, the wine. And they knew if that plane came in, everybody's going to eat well that night. They just went in there to welcome it. Well, some of you know who've been to St. Martin, the 747s no longer come there, but the other planes do. And the blast from their engines is severe. It's intense. There are signs everywhere on that beach saying, do not stand here. And everybody ignores it. Some people have actually died. I'm not kidding. But I'm going to give you a little, literally a blast from the past. This is what the KLM 747 looked like when it took off from St. Martin. You get the picture. It still happens. And there's a bar down the beach where everybody goes and gets tanked watching people get blown away. It's the entertainment of St. Martin. Welcome to it. All right, just wanted to share that. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about. I mentioned to you the 13 countries that have a 6-month validity rule and the 13 countries that have a 3-month validity rule. While we're on the number 13, let me tell you, folks, for those folks who are addicted to their apps when they travel and they want their airline ticket on their apps or their boarding pass on their apps or their confirmation on their apps, I'm old school. I want something in my hand, a printed document for another reason. It's called a 13-digit number, your actual ticket number. The first 3 numbers of those 13 digits are the designation of the airline. American Airlines would be 001. I think Delta's 006. And then 10 other numbers that signify this is a Delta ticket, this is an American ticket, this is a United ticket, etc. Because when the you-know-what hits the fan and you want to change something, the very first thing they're going to ask for is the ticket number. If the plane's delayed or canceled, they want to see the ticket number. If they want to endorse that ticket over to another carrier, remember the old days of Rule 240, they need to see the ticket number. So if you're still addicted to using everything on your phone, you're not going to see the ticket number on that app or on anything you're going to be using to get yourself boarded on the plane. So when you get your confirmation in the email that you bought this ticket, right? I know this is an old school concept. But guess what? It's called a pen and a piece of paper. Write down that 13-digit ticket number. Put it somewhere safe on your body. You'll be glad you did if something goes wrong. All right. I just want to mention that to you because it's important. Let's scroll down and say hello to a couple of folks here. All right. Okay. I have no idea what this person says, so I'm going to pass along. Hello from Jim and Harriet, always numero uno from Richmond. Nice to see you guys. Red saying, watching from Omaha. Can't wait for you to talk about Heathrow and that United pilot forgot his passport. All right, well, let's talk about it. There'll be heads rolling in Heathrow because when that power station had the fire, and they knew they had 2 other power stations that could be transferred over to supply, and then they had the capacity to supply enough electricity to Heathrow. The guys who were running Heathrow had gone to bed for the evening, and some young idiot apparently said, oh my God, let me panic and shut the whole thing down. And once you do that, they couldn't get it back up fast enough. That's what did this. They did have backup electricity and power available. Someone chose not to do it. That's a little bit different than the IT failures we've been seeing for the last 2 years or even 3 years, where airlines had to shut down entirely and they could not get back up because they did not have a proper backup system. It wasn't just rebooting, they just didn't have a backup. Let's hope the IT folks have come to their senses and have invested the money that they need to have that backup system. The reason why they never wanted to invest the money, they didn't want to spend the money. It was going to cost too much. How much did it cost them not to have it? I think they now are aware of that. So that's the Heathrow story. They're still recovering at Heathrow because remember, you're not just displacing 200,000 passengers on that one day. You're displacing all the other connecting flights. Crews are out of sequence. Planes are out of schedule. Bags, God knows where they are. And it's going to take you for every 10 hours you're shut down, 36 to 48 hours to get back up to speed. So today is what? Tuesday. They're still getting back up to speed because what about all those people who had reservations the next day? They had to honor them. So getting those other people out from the day before who were totally disadvantaged, that's the problem. How much have people lost in this? It's incalculable at this point. And the question is, how do you get covered for that? Where's your compensation for that? Because under current rules, you do get compensation if your plane is delayed or canceled and it's deemed under the airline's control. This wasn't the airline's control. This is the airport's control. So now we tend to be more litigious in the United States than they are in the UK. It'll be interesting to see what kind of claims are filed and against whom. The story's not over yet. We'll stay on top of that. The second question that you brought up, Red, was about the United Airlines pilot who forgot his passport on a flight from California to Shanghai. By the way, it was the second time in a month it's happened on a United Airlines flight. How about that? They were about 2.5 hours out from California when, whoops, pilot realized he didn't have his passport. Now, wait a minute. Don't they check your passports when you check in? Well, maybe, maybe not. Because remember, pilots at bases, and United has a base in California or in LA and in San Francisco, they go through an employee checkpoint where they're checking their ID, right? Make sure that they are airline or airport employees. They're not checking their passport. They don't carry a ticket. They carry an authorization that's in the system at the gate. But what happened to the gate agent? Did the gate agent not check the pilot's passport? Inevitably not. There's your problem. It's happened twice now. How much did that cost the airline to turn around, divert the airplane back? So basically, they were 2.5 hours out, then they got to come 2.5 hours back. That's 5 hours, which means the crew now is out of time. They've now timed out. They've burned all that fuel, and you don't want to know that it's messy. Hopefully, they'll be changing some procedures. A similar situation happened for another reason a couple of days ago on an Air France flight out of Paris coming to the U.S. What happened? They were again about 2.5 hours out. This you can't make it up. A passenger had his cell phone slip between the seats and they couldn't find it. And so many people were freaking out that the battery in that cell phone might catch fire. They declared an emergency and returned to Paris. Woo. Oh, yeah, and they found the phone, thankfully. But crazy things happen when you have to do diversions. So there you go on that one. Okay, let's move on and scroll down and say hello to some other folks. Matthew's saying hi from Syracuse. Nancy's saying, I was thinking of booking a tour to Cuba next year, but I'm a bit worried. Worried about what? Worried about what? You know how many thousands of Americans go to Cuba every year? They just don't tell anybody. You know, before listen, for years, there's a law. Let me explain the law to you. And by the way, I'm just reporting on this. I'm not encouraging you, but just understand what I'm about to say. There's something called the Trading with the Enemies Act. It dates back to 1963. And what it says is, well, let me tell you what it doesn't say. It doesn't say you can't go to Cuba. It doesn't say Americans can't go to Cuba. Here's what it does say. You're forbidden from spending US dollars there. And yet thousands of Americans sneak in every year through Mexico, through the Bahamas, through Jamaica, through Canada. Number one vacation spot for Canadians is Cuba. Okay, so how do they do it? They call a Bahamian tour operator in Nassau, and they book an all-inclusive package, a truly all-inclusive package that includes your airfare, your hotel, your meals, your ground transportation, your tips, everything taken care of, and they pay for it with a credit card in the Bahamas, which means they haven't spent any money in Cuba. The Bahamians can spend money in Cuba. You can't. And off you go. That's the loophole. And it's still being done today. And when you get to Cuba, these people are asking the Cubans, and the Cubans are complying. They do not stamp their passport. So as far as anyone's concerned, you are on vacation in the Bahamas or Canada or Jamaica or Mexico. So that's one way to do it. The other easier way to do it is when it's sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department as a people-to-people exchange, an educational or research trip where you go with a group. It's a much more prescribed schedule. You actually have to show up for these things. You're not going to be necessarily hanging at the pool. But that's how a lot of Americans can legally go to Cuba. The Trump administration has cracked down on who's allowed to go. So you can't just go to the airport and jump on a direct flight to Cuba. You have to have the permission to go under one of those auspices, which is why so many Americans use third countries to go on their own. So there's your answer there. Okay, Linda's saying, hi from Naples, going to Istanbul for a week. I don't think I need a visa, but I'm getting conflicting info. Here's the good news. You don't need a visa. Actually, they're going to give you a visa on arrival, is what they're going to do. That's by stamping your passport. But they used to charge you $30 to get a visa, which essentially was a stamp that they would lick into your passport upon arrival. That's gone now. It's a visa-free country in terms of charging. So go ahead and go. Hello from New Jersey to Gary. My good pal ML, Mary Louise from Tempe, Arizona. Matthew saying, I'm sure in a perfect world we'd be able to travel anywhere, but it's not safe for Americans to go to other places. And I'm sure you think it's safe, but it's not. Really? Okay, Matthew. Let's okay, now you got my attention. Let's get down to a definition of safety. I'm in Rio de Janeiro. Everybody tells you, oh my God, it's not safe. I've been coming to Brazil since 1984. The issues in 1984 were the same issues as today. You know what the issues are? Purse snatching, jewelry theft, like pulling something, a chain off your neck. It's stuff that you can find in Cleveland. So guess what? No expensive jewelry. I'm not advertising myself. I'm traveling with someone else. I'm enjoying Rio. I'm enjoying, and all over Brazil, I'm enjoying it. And yet the U.S. State Department would tell you, oh my God, you better be worried, and you're going to be worried. What's your definition of safety, Matthew? You say the world's not safe? Camden, New Jersey's not safe. But it doesn't stop me from going to New Jersey, right? Parts of Los Angeles are not safe. But it doesn't stop me from going to Los Angeles, right? And in fact, some might even argue that I'd much sooner go to Cairo than Compton. By the way, no offense to Compton and all the OGs. You know exactly what I'm saying. So if you want to start a discussion on this, be specific. Where you think it's not safe. Let's have a nice discussion about that. And let me either dissuade you from that or confirm your bias. Either way, happy to do it. All right, Lorraine is saying hi from Lansing, Michigan. Barbara's saying spring is trying to arrive in Louisville. Isn't it always, right? All right. Reza, I also read that passport requirement story yesterday with some countries requiring the validity be from your date of departure from that country. Yeah, but why would you even move it to the edge? If your passport is coming up on less than 6 months of validity, renew it immediately. But do what I do it a year out. Then you don't have to worry. Okay. Priya's saying, hope. Oh, she's watching from Chicago. Okay. And Mary Jo is saying, hello from Pennsylvania. I will be visiting Madison, Wisconsin for 2 days in mid-May. I'm looking for restaurant recommendations and suggestions for things to do. Well, you come to the right place because you know Madison has a special place in my heart. I went to school there. First of all, you got to go. Madison's the capital, right? Go up to the Capitol Square. There's a bar there called the Old Fashioned. What are you going to order there? Of course, you can order an Old Fashioned, but there's the other reason why you want to go. Cheese curds at the university campus, at the agriculture campus. At University of Wisconsin is a huge school, right? 60,000 people plus. But at the agriculture campus, there's a building there called Babcock Hall. What's in Babcock Hall? Dairy science. What's in dairy science? You bet the highest butterfat ice cream you'll ever have in your life. And they make about 20 flavors a day. Check that out. And then right up the street from the Old Fashioned is one of my favorite restaurants in Madison called Gray's. And even if you have to wait for a table, what do they give you while you're waiting? Truffle popcorn. What could be wrong with that? Anyway, those are just a couple of recommendations. Tom says, bean counters killing another business. It reminds you of the 80s when bean counters bought and split up companies. I feel Southwest time is running out. Well, Southwest culture has been redefined, hasn't it? And it's not just that. It's getting rid of open seating. It's putting in premium seats on the plane. It's coming up with 9 separate boarding groups. Ugh. And of course, the bag issue. So you may have a point, Tom. We'll see what happens because you see, there's a certain arrogance among airlines where they think they dominate a certain market, right? So if Delta does something stupid, which by the way, they do from time to time, their answer usually is, well, you know what? If they live in Atlanta, they got to fly us anyway. So who cares? American, if they live in Dallas, anywhere in Texas, they're going to fly us. So who cares? Southwest is now saying, or maybe not officially, if they live in St. Louis, if they live in Boston, if they live in near Chicago Midway Airport, you know what? They're going to fly us anyway, so who cares? We'll see how much the needle moves after May 28th when that luggage deal goes away. Jeff says, what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you while traveling? You know what? There are so many things. I'm going to take this question down, and next week I'll give you 3 of them. Seriously. And they come under the category of you cannot make this up. Okay? So stay with me on that. Next week I'll do it. And I appeal to all of you to tell me the funniest thing that's happened to you while traveling. Of course, it has to be something you weren't planning on. It has to be something totally unexpected. And the key thing to all this is, how did you recover? Because you know that's the key to success in travel. It's when things go wrong, how do you recover? Because plan A never works. So next week, Jeff, I'll solve that for you. Scott says, sailing on my first river cruise this weekend on the Danube. Okay, top tip. Okay, the Danube's not blue. How about that? However, check the water levels, number 1. And remember, the good news about AMA, and they do a great job, by the way, is So many of their boats are similar, so that if you have a problem with water levels and they have to bus you from one port to another, maybe another 20 minutes away, there's another ship there. Your cabin is going to be exactly the same. They've been able to adapt. So is Viking, by the way. They've been able to adapt very quickly to that. You'll have a great time. But you haven't told me where on the down you'll be going. Are you going all the way from Hungary to Austria, or where are you going? Let me know. Okay. Gail says, I'm traveling in November through Heathrow Airport on my way to Munich for a Christmas tour. Do I need to apply for an ETA to get through London? Oh, and my layover is 3 hours. As long as you're just changing planes and not coming into passport control and going into London, meaning being entered into the country, you do not need an ETA. But if you're staying over, you do. Okay. Okay. Adrian says, hello from Huntington Beach, Surf City. And Bruce, with a self-serving message, wishing you a pink day. You see, Bruce is the master of the pink shirts because he runs a dumpy little place called the Colony in Palm Beach. It ain't dumpy, but it sure is pink. Oh, if we had video today, Bruce, send them a picture of you in a pink shirt just so we can prove the point of what I just said. Nice to talk to you. All right. Hello to Raymond Bixon. All right. And of course, hello from Bergen in Germany, and Raymond's in New Jersey. Always happy to hear from you guys. Paul's saying, greetings from Ashland, Virginia. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday in DC, which gives me the perfect opportunity to put this up. That's right. This weekend, Saturday and Sunday, that's the 29th and 30th. You will see me at the Washington, D.C. Convention Center. It's the last in my series of speeches this year for the Travel and Adventure Show. Obviously, a lot to talk about, and I'll be looking forward to seeing Paul and everybody else who shows up. Again, Saturday and Sunday, go to Travel and Adventure Show on the web. It'll give you the times and, of course, the location. It's the Washington, D.C. Convention Show. Washington, D.C. Travel and Adventure Show. It's not a convention show, and I'll see you there. All right. Scott's saying, okay, Vilshofen to Budapest. Okay, so you're going to have a great time. Bottom line is, remember, you're going at a slow pace, which is great. You're docking at piers that really built commerce the way it was originally built along the river, but you're not going to be going in there with 90,000 tourists, right? There may be 2 or 3 other boats tied up, but the most people will be there is maybe 270 people, not 27,000. So you'll have a great time. Okay. I'm in saying good day, John. Oh, okay. John says, hello from Porto in Portugal. Tonight we're going on to 1756 and we'll report to you tomorrow. What John's referring to is one of my favorite restaurants in Portugal. It's called 1756. It's in Porto. I'm not exaggerating this when I tell you this. I've actually gone to Porto just to have dinner there or lunch there. That's how crazy it is. They have one item on the menu. I told John already. It's the salmon tataki. I don't know any of my friends who have sat there who, A, didn't order it and then admitted to me later they ordered it again at the same meal. They did second. So let me know, John. I want to hear the report. Okay, Loretta says, there a specific website for U.S. citizens to go to for the ETA application? Yes. We'll get that for you. We'll print it out. Not print it out. We'll post it on our website, petergreenberg.com. It's a UK government website. I have to tell you, it works very well and it works very quickly. The traditional advice has always been to apply for it within at least 72 hours before you buy your ticket. And it's going to cost you about $13. It's like 10 British pounds. My experience with it so far with many of our viewers is they're getting it back within 6 hours, which is pretty cool. So go to our website, petergreenberg.com, and Anthony on my other end here out in California will post it on there today so you can see it. Okay. Now it's time for the photo of the week. I got to love this one. Does anybody know where this was taken? Well, obviously Regina does because Regina Eklund took the photo visiting the Chihuly Museum in Seattle. Dale Chihuly is the master of blown glass. It's just amazing to see what the museum has, but also all the galleries that still carry his work. There it is. I love the light. Regina, nicely done. And of course, if you think you've got a photo of the week candidate that qualifies and when you want to join Regina on the board, just send it to photo contest at petergreenberg.com. And if we think we're right and you're right, you get right up there on the boards. Okay. So there's that. Now, last but not least, we got some questions that you sent in earlier this week. Here's one from Catherine who says, do I recommend MedJet and why? Well, I've had MedJet for nearly 28 years, and if there's any wood I could tap on, I do it now. I've never had to use it, but I'm very glad I have it. MedJet Assist is one of 3 companies I happen to think they do a great job when it comes to medical evacuation and repatriation insurance. The other 2 companies are Travel Guard and Allianz, but you have to read the fine print because there are exclusions in each one of these policies. But in the best incarnation of any policy, it's this. If you get injured or sick anywhere overseas, they will first get you medically stabilized. They'll pay for that where you are. Then they'll consult with your own doctor. After all, who knows your medical history better than your own physician? And then they will, if necessary, based on your condition, they will fly you on a medically equipped jet to the doctor and medical facility. Here are the key words of your choice. That's the best policy language you can hope for. Now, remember I said there are exclusions. There are age exclusions. There may be pre-existing medical exclusions. And maybe there's some destination exclusions like Haiti or Iraq. Check that out. But by and large, this is coverage you need to take with you everywhere you go. They sell it. Every one of these companies sells an annual policy or a family policy. It's the best thing you could have that you never hope to use, but happy that you have it. Okay. Again, go to a travel agent or a travel advisor who can walk you through the hieroglyphics of that policy language so that you not only know what you're covered for, but what you're not covered for. All right. Here's one from Fran. How do I know if my driver's license will count as real ID? I saw it has to have a star, but which states have that? Or should I just carry a passport just in case? Okay. 2 separate questions here. You go to your local DMV and say you want to register for real ID. They do it at the DMV. And that's where they give you a new license, right, with that gold star that tells security checkpoint officers you are who you say you are. Now, you also asked the question, if I have a passport, do I have to have the real ID? No, you don't. If you're carrying a valid U.S. passport, again, only 41% of Americans have one, which is why they're going for the driver's license now. But if you got the passport, you do not need real ID. Passport's the best document you can carry anywhere. All right. Jill says, why did it get so expensive to fly to Japan all of a sudden? No, it didn't happen all of a sudden. Japan was overcrowded last year. The strength of the U.S. dollar against the Japanese yen. It's still going on now. If you want to go to Japan, please wait till September, right? You'll miss the cherry blossom season, which is happening right now, but wait till September, or it's tough to get an airline ticket that's cheap. It's even tougher to get a hotel room that's cheap in Japan right now. Sarah says, I'm flying to New York this summer, and I'm wondering which airport is better to fly into, JFK or LaGuardia, and is an Uber cheaper than a taxi from the airport? Okay, 2 questions here. Number 1, you didn't tell me where you were staying once you landed. Are you staying on the east side or the west side? Are you staying in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, maybe even Staten Island? I would tell you to fly to different airports there. So I can't answer that question. What I can answer is, on balance, an Uber is cheaper than a taxi, especially when you factor in when that screen comes up and they want an immediate 20% tip on the taxi. And most of these guys, I have to say it, don't deserve it. But in any case, Uber's the way to go. However, you figure out where you're staying and that'll determine it. If you're staying in Queens, LaGuardia is perfect, or Manhattan. If you're staying out on Long Island, JFK. But remember, you're flying to New York, but you haven't told me where you're coming from, which will determine if you're flying nonstop. If you're flying to LaGuardia, there are very few nonstop flights from the West Coast. I know of maybe 1 or 2, right? Because of a perimeter rule and a few other things. But if you're flying nonstop, 95% of the chance you're going to Kennedy or Newark anyway. All right, here we go. Wendy, when is the best time to buy airline airfare for a trip to Dublin and out of London in mid-October? Right now you can do it, right? You're far enough in advance. Airfares have not been adjusted yet. They are going to go down September 15th. So if you want to roll the dice, you can do that. Or you can buy the ticket, then cancel it, get a credit, and rebuy it later. You can always hedge it that way without losing a lot of money, okay? Or do what I suggest you do so that you don't pay that UK tax for leaving London. You pay no tax for going to London. So maybe you go to London and then somehow get to Dublin by boat or train, then you can come back. But forgetting that. Bottom line is you can buy the tickets now and then hedge your bets. Okay. Eloise says, If I'm flying through Heathrow and not staying in London, but only a connection flight, do I still need to pay the? Yeah, I answered that already. The answer is you don't need the ETA. Okay. All right. Now, bottom line is, let's scroll down here and see some more people. I'm going to scroll down here. Hold on. Okay. Oh, some friends from Indonesia are on board here today. And Joan, love the photo. Okay. Red says, speaking of Wisconsin undiscovered gems, I went to visit Door County and Peninsula and take that ferry up to Wash Island. I couldn't agree with you more. We love Door County. We do. By the way, speaking of Door County, one other thing you can do, it's coming up every July. It's the EAA. Does everybody know what the EAA is? It's the Experimental Aircraft Association. It's their fly-in Oshkosh. And for 1 3 or 4 day period in July, the little small airport in Oshkosh becomes the busiest airport in the world. You just get out there with your binoculars, get a little beach towel on the grass, and it's nuts. If you're an ab geek like me, it's heaven. Okay. Oh, a lot of people like the photo. Okay. All right. Here we go. Good morning from Sonoma. Right back at you. Again, another reminder about the Washington, D.C. Travel and Adventure Show this Saturday and Sunday. I'll see you there. The radio show coming up this Saturday, coming from a place that we love. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Washington, D.C. It's way west and way north. So check it out on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you can't find it in your market, that's easy. We stream it live right on our website, petergreenberg.com. And of course, as things develop with the foreign travel to the U.S., the proposed ban on 43 countries, we'll let you know about that as well. It's getting crazier by the moment, as there are a lot of legal cases that still need to be resolved. We will stay on top of that. Of course, you can always write me in the meantime, peter@petergreenberg.com. And of course, I want to thank Anthony for doing the boards out in California today. He just got back from Cairo. I'm in Rio, about to get on a plane tonight. So have a great rest of the week, everybody. We'll see you next week from another undisclosed location for Global Travel Update. And please be safe.
Just doesn't see. No, she doesn't see. But she doesn't see.
Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.